Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Tom Bracken. I'm the president of the New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar. Today's event is part of an ongoing series of webinars that we have put on to focus on the challenges facing small business today in the post-pandemic New Jersey economy. In many recent surveys, in fact, one we just conducted, a lack of qualified or willing workers ranks right at the top, with the inflation as the two major concerns facing the small business community today. Today, we have a panel of small business executives to offer ideas on how to address this problem, and I think you'll find their comments very useful. And in a moment, I'm going to turn the webinar over to Ed Mikulich, who is the Director of Commercial Lines Underwriting for New Jersey manufacturers. Before I do that, let me talk about today's format, if I could. Ed will introduce Stephanie Ferguson from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, who this summer offered a very comprehensive study on the ongoing labor shortage in the country. A link to that report will be posted in the chat box for you. Stephanie will talk about 15 minutes to summarize the key findings of that report. After that, Ray Zardetto of the Chamber will introduce the three guest panelists, and we will spend the balance of the webinar discussing specific ways to cope with the labor shortage. We invite you to submit questions via the chat box. We will get to as many questions as we can during the hour we have. And again, I would like to thank New Jersey Manufacturers Insurance Group for being our sponsor and our partner over this series of webinars, and also the series of webinars we had last year. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Ed Mikulich, Director of Commercial Lines Underwriting for New Jersey Manufacturers. Ed, it's all yours.
Thank you, Tom. Good morning, everybody. I'm Ed Mikulich, the Director of Commercial Lines Underwriting here at NJM Insurance Group. NJM is proud to sponsor this webinar series spotlighting the issues facing small businesses in New Jersey. I want to thank the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce for the opportunity to briefly speak with you guys today. New Jersey Chamber of Commerce has been an essential voice for Garden State businesses for more than a century, and a vocal advocate in the corridors of the Capitol and Trent. For 109 years, NJM has been helping small businesses meet their insurance needs. We've been the largest writer of workers' compensation insurance in New Jersey for more than 70 years. We're also a leading provider of commercial auto insurance. We wrote these two lines, and only these two lines, of business for a better part of a century. However, we've added new products to better serve our policyholders and potential new customers and remain competitive in an increasingly competitive marketplace. We've expanded our footprint at the same time. NJM is now a regional insurer serving business customers in Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, New York, Pennsylvania, and of course, right here in New Jersey. We now offer the NJM Pro Edge Business Owners Policy, which combines protection for common property and liability risks designed for smaller businesses. Also new is the NJM Pro Pack Commercial Package Policy, which protects mid to large size businesses against property and liability risks. NJM business policyholders receive the highest levels of service, including access to our nationally recognized claims and certified loss prevention specialists. The focus on safety, long an NJM hallmark, is to help business owners identify and correct workplace hazards before accidents occur. And if an injury should happen, our claims and medical service professionals work to mitigate losses and contain claim costs. We take pride in aligning the right coverages for our policyholders, providing an outstanding customer service experience, and sharing benefits in the form of dividends. We want to help our policyholders grow and in turn grow with them. If you're not already an NJM business customer, I encourage you to visit njm.com and review our agent directory and get a free quote or contact us with any questions. It is now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker this morning. Stephanie Ferguson is the Director of Global Employment Policy and Special Initiatives at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Her portfolio of work includes unemployment insurance, international labor, non-compete agreements, and workers' compensation policy. Stephanie also oversees the U.S. Chamber's data centers. She has been a prominent advocate for unemployment insurance modernization and recently represented U.S. employers at the International Labor Conference in Geneva, Switzerland. She earned her BA in Political Science and Spanish Language and Literature, as well as her Master of Public Administration degree from the University of Nevada. This summer, Stephanie authored a report entitled Understanding America's Labor Shortage. This document is full of fascinating insights and in-depth analysis of how the labor shortage came to be. She will share some of these insights with us today. Following Stephanie's presentation, a panel of small business owners and executives will discuss how they are dealing with the labor shortage. It is now my pleasure to introduce Stephanie Ferguson. Stephanie?
Thank you for that warm introduction, Ed. I am really excited to be here with all of you today, and it would not be a Zoom meeting if I didn't let you all know that I was going to share my screen. So just give me one moment to let me do that, please. So like I said, I'm really excited to be here with all of you today to discuss the current labor market. As we all know, America is facing a worker shortage crisis. There are too many open jobs without people to fill them. And as a result, many businesses can't grow, compete, and thrive. And too many workers cannot realize their American dreams. To address these issues, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce launched the America Works initiative, which includes data centers, much of the data you'll see today, articles that dive deep into specific workforce topics, and guides to tax credits and best practices, which help employers across the country develop and discover talent, fill open jobs, and grow our economy. After today's call, I'm happy to send a document around that has links to all of our wonderful America Works content, and I'm always happy to connect offline. Today, I'll review the state of our labor market, go over some reasons why we are dealing with the workforce shortage, and finally share some information and tools that might help employers navigate the current climate. So with that, let's dive in. We all lived through the pandemic and remember what took place, but I think it's really helpful to see a visual representation of how unemployment and job opening trajectories have changed over the last 2 years. In March 2020, over 120,000 businesses temporarily closed, and more than 20 million US workers were unemployed. Since then, the job openings have continued to climb, and the unemployment rate has returned to a relatively low number. Both job creation and low unemployment are good things, especially good economic indicators. But as you can see, we have a large gap. There are 10.7 million open jobs in the US right now, and only 5.7 million unemployed workers. This means that if every unemployed person found a job today, we would still have 5.2 million open jobs. So what is the reason for this gap? Well, as you can see, one main reason is that we have a lower labor force participation rate today than we did pre-pandemic. Labor force participation is down 1 full percentage point compared to February 2020. And that difference equates to 2.75 million workers who are missing from the labor force. And we'll dive in later to explore where these workers may have gone. The U.S. Chamber hears every day from businesses in every state that they are facing a labor shortage crisis, and New Jersey is no exception. The number of open jobs has decreased over the last year in New Jersey, but you still have 279,000 unfilled job openings and 172,000 unemployed individuals. At the Chamber, we use these numbers to calculate our worker shortage index, and New Jersey's is a 0.79. This means that there are 79 workers for every 100 open jobs. So like the nation as a whole, New Jersey simply does not have enough workers to fill the open jobs. And while New Jersey's labor force participation rate is above the national average of 62.4%, it is still lower than your pre-pandemic rate of 64.7% in February 2020. This is also happening in every industry. Industries that typically are comprised of occupations that require specific skills and training are suffering from available workforce not having the right skills or experience, and industries that have many entry-level jobs and offer a little bit lower paying wages are also suffering. We are seeing that manufacturing, financial activity, and professional business services industries have unemployment rates that are relatively low compared to the national average. So this could mean that workers that do have the skills required for these industries are working at a very high rate. One thing that I like to point out is that the Great Resignation was really zooming across headlines a few months ago, but I believe that it's more of a great reshuffle. As you can also see, quit rates in July were relatively high for leisure and hospitality industries, and specifically our retail industries. But if you compare to hiring rates, they are lower, which means that while individuals are leaving their current employment, they seem to be re-entering the workforce in either different jobs in the same industry or in different industries altogether. This could mean that employers are having more of a difficulty retaining workers than they are having a difficulty attracting workers. So why is this all taking place? Well, one reason is that Americans saved an unprecedented $2.7 trillion with a T during the pandemic. Pandemic relief checks, enhanced unemployment insurance, and limited expenditures helped facilitate the historic savings, as did the limited options for spending those savings, as many normal spending options were unavailable or significantly limited during the pandemic. In turn, many Americans were able to live off of the money they put aside, postponing a return to work. In May 2022, a survey of individuals was released in May 2022 survey of individuals who became unemployed during the pandemic. Nearly a quarter said that government aid disincentivized people from looking for work, and 1 in 6 said that they had saved enough money that finding full-time work was not urgent. One stat I found most compelling from this survey was that 38% of respondents indicated they have no intention of returning to full-time work in a year or more. We also know that many women and parents left the workforce. Mothers in particular tended to stay home, and women's workforce participation rate was 57.1% in August 2022, compared to 57.9% in February 2022. So women's workforce is still in a decline compared to before the pandemic, but it is trending back upward. The most often reason women left the workforce was to offer childcare. In February 2022, nearly 60% of parents who left the workforce during the pandemic reported they left because they could not find a childcare solution. During the pandemic, unemployment benefits were available to parents who had to provide care, and this was a prominent issue. More than 17,000 childcare centers temporarily closed during the pandemic, meaning there had to be at least one parent who was available to stay home and take care of the child. Most often, this choice became a logical choice, and the parent who made the least amount of money was the one who decided to stay home. We have found that this caused a change in lifestyle for many of the pandemic unemployed. And this is that same survey that came out in May 2022. We know that about 1 in 5 respondents said that they had changed their lifestyle to become a homemaker, and many more are continuing to rely on the income of another person in the household. Immigration is also at an all-time low, meaning that we have less immigrant workers in the United States today than we would have had the pandemic not occurred. Between 2015 and 2016, the United States population increased by 1 million due to immigration. That number has shrunk to 250,000 between 2020 and 2021. So we are missing some immigrant workers. Moreover, we have fewer work visas available than the number of guest worker visas employers are requesting. For example, employers requested over 480,000 H-1B visas for fiscal year 2023. However, the cap is only 85,000 new visas. To address this issue, the Chamber has advocated on raising the visa caps, and I believe there was movement from the Biden administration there. It should be said, too, that 3 million workers retired early during the pandemic, and some of those workers have re-entered the workforce, but not all of them. So what can employers do to fill these gaps? The Chamber of Commerce has decided or has begun to highlight specific talent pools, and 2 of which look into individuals who are disabled and neurodiverse and individuals who are formerly incarcerated. Here's what I found interesting. While most respondents cited that their disability was a barrier to employment, other hurdles include a lack of education and training, a lack of transportation, and a lack of accommodations. These barriers can be addressed through workplace accommodations, like increased training or modifications to equipment. Providing accommodations for employees comes at a relatively low cost, And in a recent study, the return on investment is great. Companies with the most inclusive workplaces for employees with disabilities experience nearly 30% higher revenues and greater economic profits. On our website, the second chance hiring is also a great talent pool to explore. This refers to individuals who are formerly incarcerated. And in a recent survey, 85% of HR leaders and 81% of business leaders say that second chance hires perform the same or better than other employees. Additionally, we have many resources on our site that share ways that employers can take advantage of specific tax credits or best hiring practices when exploring various talent pools. And I hope you will take a chance to look at those. Finally, we know that the labor market is tight and attracting talent has become a bit more of a challenge. In that same survey from May 2022, respondents indicated that hiring bonuses was the #1 motivator to returning to work. We also know that company culture and a sense of meaning is very important to our labor force. They want to feel like their work that they are doing is important and impactful and that they have room to grow and learn. And finally, we're hearing it everywhere. Employees increasingly want a flexible work environment, specifically remote work, where is appropriate for the business and the position. I hope that I provided a good overview for us that can help facilitate our discussion today, and happy to answer any questions. With that, I'll turn it back over to Ray.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. It's a good report, and I do have some questions, I think, that have come up from what we saw in the report. But first, I think I'd like to do is to introduce our panel, who we'll be bringing in for part of the discussion now. So let's start by doing that. I'm going to introduce the panelists alphabetically, and then I'll ask each of them to just quickly spend a minute or two explaining what their business is, what kind of labor force, workforce they have, and then we'll get to talking about what they're doing to help alleviate the labor shortage at their company. First, Michelle Abate, Director of Marketing from Crystal Springs Resort. Hello, Michelle, welcome.
Thank you, Ray, and good morning, everyone. I'm Michelle Abate, Director of Marketing, as Ray said, at Crystal Springs Resort. We are one of the Northeast's largest destination resorts located in beautiful Sussex County, which for those of you who don't know, that's the northwestern corner of the state. Our resort is comprised of 2 hotels with over 400 rooms combined, 6 golf courses, 2 spas, multiple dining venues, in and outdoor pools, a renowned wine cellar, and we also host hundreds of wedding and corporate events. And from a labor standpoint, we have over 1,000 employees during our peak summer months.
Thank you, Michelle. Next, I'd like to introduce Patricia Claybrook, Jidan Cleaning CEO and President. Good morning, Patricia.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Pat Claybrook, President and CEO of Jidan Cleaning. We are a full-service commercial cleaning company with offices in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. Pertaining to labor force, our labor force, majority of our labor force are hourly blue-collar workers. And I look forward to furthering the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Mike Reagan from CGI. He's Senior Vice President there, and we're glad to have him with us this morning. Mike.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Mike Reagan. I'm a Senior Vice President with CGI. CGI is a global IT and management consulting company, 87,000 employees worldwide. And locally, I have 250 employees located in New Brunswick. CGI believes in a client proximity model. Our founder believes that local decisions are best made by the local leaders and the local team. It allows client intimacy and us to be nimble as we serve our clients. So think of my team as a small business embedded in a large corporation.
Great. Thank you, Mike. All right. So there's certainly no dearth of topics to cover in the labor shortage market. Stephanie, I'd just like to ask you one question first before we get to the panelist stuff. For the survey and the results of the survey that you shared, was this survey nationwide?
The survey was nationwide, but it was a smaller sample survey done by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, specifically looking at individuals who became unemployed during the pandemic. You can see the results on our website. This survey has taken place 3 times, November 2021, May 2021, and most recently May 2022.
Okay. All right. So, well, there's certainly a number of ways we can go about this. Michelle, I think to start with you with the first question. So, based on the number of guests you must have at the resort at any time between the golf courses and the hotels and everything like that, you have a variety of labor requirements, obviously.
Yes.
Is there one way to go about getting the kind of talent you need, or do you have to specialize in the way you go after the talent, the way you target it?
Well, challenging times call for innovative measures in this instance. And we've always had a recruitment effort at the resort, but what we found in the hospitality sector is we were completely devastated. So you can imagine that, you know, the travel and tourism sector is going to be hit up hard on a continuum if the virus rears its ugly head again, which is, you know, up in the air at this juncture. There is really no work from home privilege when you're servicing guests. So we don't have that option to put out, as Stephanie brought up, that's very appealing to workers. And finally, within our industry, the concept of working nights and weekends somewhat went the way of the dinosaur because people are realizing that life is short. So you have that challenge already with the hospitality sector. So we had to put on our brainstorming hats and really came up with a number of initiatives. So we had an expansion in our recruitment department. Apart from being on the typical websites, Indeed and the like, we started a multi-pronged marketing campaign, digital, social media, radio, print, outdoor. Also, the positioning we utilized is when you join Crystal Springs Resort, you're not just getting a job, you're getting a shot at a career in hospitality. And we like to position that there's an opportunity to learn from the best. So that was definitely helpful. And also working at a resort, there are perks you get. You can play free golf, discounts on dining, discounts on spa, admission to free events, and on and on. But one of the other tactics that we utilized, which was super successful, we marketed to the Hispanic population in Patterson and Passaic. And we have a shuttle that transports workers back and forth to the resort. So you can imagine in those communities, car ownership is not high. And given the gas prices of today, which we're all being devastated by, that was really appealing to offer that up. So those were just a few tactics we utilized.
Patricia, I would think you've got, even with flexibility being as important as it seems to be to workers today, you probably have some of the same challenges given the requirements of your workforce and everything. So are you finding the same kinds of issues?
100%. And as Michelle stated, we don't have the option of work from home when you're providing, you know, cleaning services. So some of the things that we had to put into place, now I have 2 on my staff that all they do is recruit, right? So they're always interviewing. We're paying more attention to getting to know the applicant, because it's not just about the salary that will draw them in. So we're doing more to find out what appeals to people. Why would they want to work for a small minority-owned cleaning company? We've also raised our salaries, which that is a challenge in itself, because raising the salary, who's going to pay for that gap, right? So then we have to go to the account that we serve and explain, you know, why we need to do that. So those are some of the things that that we're doing. For the first time this year, in my 15 years of business, I've actually started to use a recruiter for management positions. Previously, I would either get referrals or use LinkedIn, etc. So that's been very successful also.
Okay, thank you. Mike, one of the questions I'd like to pose to you is, because Patricia just talked about raising salaries as part of the incentive for hiring new workers. So, where does a business draw the line between being able to absorb the expense of additional salaries versus how much they can afford to, or how much they can absorb before they have to pass those costs on to their various customers and clients? Do you have to wrestle with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like Patricia said, we're seeing that increased salaries to attract the talent, particularly in the management levels. But what we're doing is it's one of two things. You're either reducing your margins or you are passing some of that back to your customers. And it really is, it's got to be a balance. Sometimes we pass that through to our customers and sometimes we absorb that. But you got to find the right balance. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to attract the talent.
Okay. And you're doing many of the same things that Patricia and Michelle were talking about as well?
We are. And actually, we've taken a couple different approaches. I look at them as both, what are we doing short term? But what are we doing long term? Short term is, increased salaries, a personal touch. Myself and my management team, we get involved in every hiring. This is not a recruiting issue at CGI. This is a business issue. So it's that personal touch. I reinforce to my recruiters that they're selling CGI since candidates have options and they have to sell and put CGI front and center. Flexibility. I do have the option of having people work remote, and it really is giving folks that flexibility to be with our clients or in our office when it's appropriate, but also to be remote when it's appropriate. Long term, we're working with the local universities, Rowan, Rutgers, Montclair, and getting involved in the ecosystem where I'm helping put together curriculums, internships, externships that'll lead to employees that have been trained to work or with the skill sets that CGI needs up front. We're also taking that down to the elementary and high school level. So we're doing STEM camps at the elementary level, which feeds into P-Tech high schools, which again, it's a love of technology, as well as the high school students understanding the careers that they could have if they go down a technology path. So it's both a long-term approach as well as a short-term approach.
Okay. I'd like to switch the conversation around a little bit first. Ask Stephanie, I'd like to ask you something to lead into this part of the discussion here. So I didn't notice in any of your slides or any of the information there that one of the factors in people's decisions about whether to come back to work or not was COVID-19, and whether people are still concerned about that when they come to the office. Was that not a factor any longer in their decisions from what you saw?
That's a great question, and it still is a factor, but we've seen that the percentage of individuals who are still concerned about COVID-19 has dropped dramatically. We also saw that required vaccinations in the workplace was a key indicator of individuals wanting to come back to the workplace or not, and that too has dissipated across all employees as we've gotten farther away from the first instance of COVID-19.
So it's not as much, or it's not as influencing a factor as it might have been a year ago or something like that.
Correct.
And then Michelle, Patricia, or Mike, have you found any concerns? Have you heard expressions of concerns and folks that you've either hired or tried to hire about the COVID-19 situation?
I have not. I'm not going to say it's behind us, but more and more of the candidates that we're working with and my existing employees, they're vaccinated and back in the workforce.
I would say it's dissipated at Crystal Springs, and one factor that gives our staff a comfort level is that any overnight guest or guest who's participating in an activity needs to sign a waiver stating that they've been virus-free for 14 days. They're coming in as far as they know with a clean bill of health. And that makes the workers feel a bit more comfortable that the onslaught of guests coming in are predominantly healthy.
Tricia?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've seen that concern has dissipated. I know some of our accounts, one way to make employees feel comfortable we're part of that solution, the cleaning company, by showing the account what the disinfectants that we use and what the process is to clean the environment in the building. More are about that, which eases their angst, even for our staff. So each account has their own requirements as to who comes in the building, right? And so that has become less of a, not as important as it was a year ago or a year and a half ago.
Okay. All right, Patricia, let me follow up with another question. Start with you this time. So if you think about state and local governments, are there things they've done that you can point to that have been helpful to you and your business? And if not, what can they be doing that they're not?
I think the biggest challenge that I find, so like I stated earlier, most of my employees are hourly, low income employees, right? And because of the pandemic, childcare, just like Stephanie stated, right? A lot of my employees are the ones that's responsible for taking care of their children. A lot of them are single moms or single dads, right? And so when childcare is not available, when they can't afford to pay childcare, they can't come to work. And that starts a cycle of, just a challenge for all of us, for them as well as us as their employer. So if they could institute something that could address that would be awesome. A lot of my employees, which I don't know if the state could help this, but they, like Michelle stated, they don't drive, right? And so we've instituted a policy also where we try to provide transportation. We've been using Uber a lot. Sometimes for us, it's better to get them there. However, we can get them there to provide the service versus not having someone there. So just those two are our biggest issues right now, as far as getting people where we need them to provide the service.
So childcare and transportation are two key areas for you. Okay. Mike?
Definitely the childcare, and I agree with what Stephanie was saying earlier. It is a challenge. I think part of the solution is our government needs to increase childcare credits. I think they have to expand pre-K programs to allow more of the younger students into those programs. That'll help with that childcare ecosystem. But right now, it needs to be expanded, or we're going to continue to have the issues that we're seeing, where folks have to stay home. And like Stephanie said, it's typically the parent with the smaller salary that stays home, but it's still a challenge on the family when it's only one salary.
Okay. And Michelle, I don't know if you have any other perspectives on this you want to share?
Well, I'd like to go back to the question you asked about the towns and the municipalities working hand in hand with them. I mean, in the instance of where we operate, we have a very good collaboration and partnership with the towns, and they really worked with us, and it was in their best interest because they stand to gain in tax revenues from our lodging and the like. But we, due to the expansiveness of the space we have up at the resort and in the surrounding area, we were able to migrate a lot of our venues outdoors and got permits and again, a fair amount of collaboration from the municipality and townships to let us operate. And it was a win-win because the more visitors who come into the surrounding area, they'll spend, they'll support local businesses, and again, the coffers fill up. So it's a win all across the board.
Okay. And Stephanie, if I can, at the national level, with this question about the labor shortage, I mean, from what you can tell, what's the sense in Congress about this? Does Congress acknowledge that this is a significant problem? Do you get any sense they're working on Any level or types of solutions for this?
That is a great question. I know specifically, like I had mentioned, the Biden administration did increase the visa caps for 2023 visas. And I believe that there is some murmuring, don't quote me on this, but of specific reforms at the congressional level to help address these workforce issues. But this is a great question that I can relay over to my congressional affairs team and get a better answer for you.
Good. All right. All right. I had one question come in, Patricia, that I thought this one would be good for you. What do you find? You said earlier that you're now working with a placement agency, an employment agency for some of your management positions, I think it was. Do you find there are more advantages than disadvantages in working with agencies in this way now?
So far, I would say more advantages. And what we decided to do was work with an agency that only works in the janitorial cleaning industry. And so that's been very helpful that they've been able to provide us candidates that not only have managerial experience, but managerial experience in this specific agency, industry. So that's been very helpful. My business coach and I, what we did, we vetted 4 firms and picked the one that we wanted to work with.
Okay. I have another question, Stephanie, for you. May start another round of discussions on this. So in your presentation, you were talking about people pointing to either the monies they saved during the pandemic, during the shutdown, as being money they could live off of, or the government assistance programs being money they could draw from so they don't have to work, or they may not even intend to go back to work full time. Does your survey or look at that, assess how long can people maintain that? I mean, you know, that money can't last forever. So is there any sense at the U.S. Chamber about how long people can survive financially doing this?
At this moment, we don't have a clear sense of what savings accounts looks like at the moment and how long individuals can survive without returning to work. But we do know that inflation is reducing these savings accounts quicker, which can be a driving force to return individuals back to the labor market. And in that survey, I believe it was 12% of the respondents said that they never plan to return to work. So those savings accounts must be doing them well.
Okay. Okay. To a general question to the panel based on that, do you find when you're interviewing people, when you're assessing candidates for particular jobs, are they coming in with a gung-ho attitude about wanting the job, or are they more giving you a sense that they're doing you a favor by coming in for the interview? Which do you find to be more the case these days? I'll open up to any one of you.
Yeah, I see it as a mix. I'm seeing my younger employees come in gung-ho. They have when I say younger, college hires, all right? Mm-hmm. They have the degrees, are looking for that first job. I see the more senior employees a little more reserved. Back to my point of, we have to sell CGI to them, whether it's because they have other options or they're still thinking through whether they want to come back into the workforce. But in the past, prior to the pandemic, you know, people wanted to work for CGI. Now it's a little more harder to attract that senior member, and our recruiting team has to be front and center around selling the benefits of CGI to those senior employees.
Okay. Michelle or Patricia, any perspective on this?
Yeah, I would say across the board, at least in the initial phases, you know, regardless of age, we are seeing enthusiastic employees come in, which is positive. I'd like to think that what we're offering staff, you know, maybe enables that enthusiastic response, but you know, it's one of the challenges is that retention. Because I think what's happening in a lot of industries is you hire, you promise the sun, the moon, and the stars, certain salary perks, what have you. And many candidates, especially at a lower managerial level, are always looking for the next best stint. And that is problematic. How do you keep them motivated? how do you keep that enthusiasm up? What do you have to keep throwing at them to stay so they don't get deflected and go elsewhere?
Patricia?
Mhm. I would say that the candidates are empowered. Like they're coming to the interview or the interview process feeling empowered. And what I mean by that is that they know that we need them, right? And they know that there are more jobs out there than there are people. So, so they're not being shy as to what they're looking for. I'd say they're very confident. Even sometimes providing like ultimatums during the interview, asking for unrealistic salary ranges. So it's a different pool of candidates. Like they are empowered, and they know that. So that puts the employer in a tricky situation. You have to balance what you're willing to offer, right? And whatever you offer, at the end of the day, you have to deliver. Whatever those additional perks are besides the salary, they're looking for you to to walk the talk. But there's definitely an empowering. Yeah.
To that end, then one more question related to this, and I'm going to ask you for a one-word answer first, and then we can elaborate. But in the last year to a year and a half, have you found your turnover rates for new employees higher than they used to be, about the same, or less than they used to be? So give me the option answer first. Which one? Higher than normal, or less than normal on your turnover rates in the last year and a half? Then we can expound on it a little bit. Go ahead, Patricia.
Here. Higher.
There's been a higher turnover rate.
Oh, so you want me to expound on it?
Well, actually,
Yeah,
let me just
higher
ask,
turnover,
let me just
yes.
ask Michael and Michelle first, and then then we'll expound on for all of you too. Mike,
Higher.
higher turnover rate. Yeah.
Higher.
Ditto.
Okay, so higher is
Higher.
okay. So we've agreed to the higher turnover rates. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Patricia. Now you want to expound on that a little bit?
On why it's higher, or
Yeah.
just the experience of
Either.
what we're going through? Oh yeah,
Either.
no, it's we have everything's higher, meaning that the whole hiring effort, getting people, candidates, we make appointments for them for interviews. People don't show up for the interview. We go through a rigorous interview process, and we make offers and then set them up for their first day. They don't show up, or they'll show up and after the first day not come back. So that whole process, or they'll work for a month or not even get through their 90-day probation period, and they don't return. So what we've been trying to do when those situations happen, I have my team reach out to them to find out why, because we want to know why. Is it something that and they home, right? The work is too strenuous. It's not what they thought it would be, etc. So, I tell my team, we just have to recruit at a high level, that process to get the best candidate. Whereas before the pandemic, we might have to interview 3 people and have a choice of 2 good candidates. Now we might have to interview 6 to 8 to get that one good candidate.
Okay, before I ask Mike and Michelle to weigh in, Patricia, you find that when you get that kind of feedback from your prospects who decide not to take the job for whatever reason, the work being too strenuous to their best, do you find that to be a learning process for you, and how you then evaluate and talk to prospective candidates after that? Would you
Absolutely.
factor that into the conversation?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And because as we all know, recruiting costs money. It's time and money, right?
Mhm.
So if we're doing something wrong, or if there's something that we part of the process that we can improve on, I want to know what that is. So we can implement that. But I think from the feedback that I've gotten, it's not so much that we're doing something wrong, more that the candidates have more options and they feel entitled and empowered. And they know that there are more positions than there are candidates. So they're out looking for the total best package, whatever that is.
Michelle, I assume you're going to agree with most of what you just heard.
Yes, I would reiterate what Patricia said, but we have, and I think you and I spoke about this, we have held almost monthly job fairs, and that has really been helpful because once we get a potential employee to come on the grounds of the resort and they understand the setting and the environment they'll be working in, that has really been very helpful for us in selling the position. And also, I had said this prior, but I think it's relevant. It's how we position the employment to the candidate. You're not just coming for a job. You're coming for a potential career experience. And we've also, apart from having these in-person job fairs, we've allowed for online registration and Zoom interviews. So we have, we've really tried to make it easy and make the process, without any roadblocks so that we can get that candidate in the door.
Okay, and before I turn over to Mike, one follow-up for you then. It sounds like a very elaborate process you go through now in terms of selling the resort as a place to work. Is this something you did before the pandemic and before the labor shortage, or is this all new relative to the labor market as it is now?
No, we definitely utilize the same strategy of it's not just a job, it's a career, but we've really driven that point home. And again, given the industry that we're in and how battered the tourism and travel industry was during the pandemic, it's a harder sell now because people are gun shy, and rightfully so. It's like, wait a minute, am I going to be employed if the virus hits again? And, we have to try to overcome those concerns. So it's, we try to do that via this positioning of, hey, you have a potential lifelong career here.
Mike?
I think Patricia and Michelle said it very well. It's very competitive. And what we've seen is we will agree on terms. And as we're doing background checks, we'll get a call from the candidate saying, I have taken a position somewhere else. So they're shopping those offers. So our focus has been on retention. How do you keep the employees we already have? Particularly for us, as we look at our attrition rates, it was in that 1 to 5 year tenured employee. And our focus has been on, off-cycle raises and bonuses, simple things like happy hours, right? Just making that employee feel welcome, feel valued, right? And let them know that we have them as part of our long-term plans and that we want them to stay with CGI.
Okay, Mike, I think this question is more for you because you are more of an office environment in this way. But so what's the trend now? How many days a week are people coming to the office? How many days a week are you requiring them to come? And what's your sense in your industry? How other companies are doing?
Yep. Well, it's a couple ways to answer that. One that always takes precedent is what are my clients' requirements? My commercial clients tend to be more remote versus my state and local government clients tend to be back in the office. All right. But for being in my office, we give our employees flexibility. We believe that there's value in collaboration and working as a team. So I expect my team leaders to have those, whether it's weekly or monthly meetings, bring the team together. It's also part of a retention. Let's come together. Let's work. Let's collaborate. But let's go to a happy hour. Let's all go to lunch together. So that's working well for us. We do not have a policy anymore of you must be in the office a certain number of weeks. We do leave it to the flexibility of the individual employee as well as the needs of the business, whether it be our clients' needs or just that coming together, collaborating at a team meeting one day, and then having some fun in the afternoon.
All right. All right. Well, we've covered a lot of things here today, including a lot of potential strategies and tactics that employers can use. So we're coming up near the end of our time here. Stephanie, let me just turn to you. Is there any last suggestions or comments you want to make with regard to this topic, and that might be useful to our participants today?
None that I can think of off the top of my head, but I would just encourage everyone to again reach out to your state and local chamber or to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and look on our website for different tools, tax guides, and best practices in trying to really take advantage of the diverse labor pools that are out there and ways that you can benefit from different methods of hiring and attracting and retaining different workers.
Excuse me, I'm going to put you on the spot, though. How much longer is this labor shortage going to last?
It's a tough question. If I had a crystal ball, I would tell you, but unfortunately, we still have that 5 million job opening gap if every unemployed person took a job. And we also know that not every unemployed person has the right skills or is in the right geographical area to fill a job near them. So this labor shortage, it's going to be a challenge for a little bit longer, I believe.
Okay. All right. Again, starting from the top, we'll go alphabetically. Michelle, any last comments, thoughts with regard to this issue and what you're doing?
No, we have to stay the course. I think I didn't bring up that one of the other initiatives that we utilized, excuse me, this summer with some success is the Summer Work and Travel USA program. So we brought in students from overseas. It allows them to learn about the culture, have camaraderie, experience the area. So again, given how busy we are in the summer, that definitely helped our cause. But we, further to what Mike said, retention is really going to be a key focal point moving forward.
Patricia.
I just wanted to mention in the slide that Stephanie talked about, I call them ex-offenders and rehiring them in the workplace. And so I've always done that. But I've seen an increase in that pool of folks to hire. And they've been my best employees. And see, for us, hire that person is predicated by what our customer requires to enter their building, right? And so I have seen that our customers, our clients are more willing on a case-by-case basis that if someone has been incarcerated to look at that person, that one person as an individual and listen to their story of what happened, and we're able to hire that person to work in that building. So I see that doors opening more, and they're great people and they do great work for me.
Any last thoughts, comments, suggestions, answers to the question, answers to the problem?
No, Ray, I just want to say, Ray, thanks to you and Tom for pulling this together on a very pressing issue that's impacting, New Jersey businesses, big and small. So I found this very informative. So thank you, Michelle and Patricia and Stephanie. And hopefully those that joined found this informative.
Okay. I would like to mention that we did record this and we'll be posting this on the chamber website after we get it edited just a little bit. It'll be up probably in about an hour, certainly by early this afternoon, and our members and other chamber members will be able to access it. They'll be able to listen to everything we said today. So Patricia, Mike, Michelle, thanks very much for your time today, for your preparation and your work and your suggestions today. Stephanie, thank you also for anchoring the webinar today and for your report. Again, the report and the link for it is on the chat box for anybody who would like to get it that way. Thank you also to Ed McCullich and our partners, New Jersey manufacturers. Without them, we couldn't do these webinars. We have another one scheduled for October and another one for November to touch on some of these other key issues. So we hope everyone will join us when we resume in another month. So again, thank you all. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.